Hashtag get her snipe.
Perhaps she was just hashtag down on your luck.
Hashtag flower girl. Hashtag lower. Hashtag class.
I think she would be a great student for you. Hashtag potential. Hashtag studious.
Hashtag owie owie ow.
What is that? Hashtag screeching. Hashtag wretched.
Oi, teach me not to hashtag screech. Hashtag proper. Hashtag ambitious.
Hashtag lower. Hashtag class. You can't even pay me.
Why don't we make this interesting? Hashtag wager. Hashtag all pay. Hashtag upper. Hashtag class.
I'll not have you pay. Hashtag pride. Hashtag dignity.
Hashtag squash cabbage leaf. Hashtag lower. Hashtag class. Hashtag no money. Hashtag put in the dustbin.
Come now, Henry. We'll make her a hashtag duchess. Hashtag transformation. Hashtag playing with fire.
Henry Higgins, you're a hashtag brute. Hashtag rude. Hashtag salty.
Henry Higgins.
Oh, she'll get it eventually, Henry. Hashtag badgering her. Hashtag patience.
It's hashtag hopeless.
You think you're hashtag so much better.
I am.
She's learning. Hashtag hard work pays off.
Like she can't read alphabet soup.
The rain in Spain falls mainly in the plain. The rain in Spain falls mainly in the plain.
Hashtag OMG. She's saying it. Hashtag flawlessly.
Hashtag never expected it. Hashtag ceiling built. Hashtag class goodbye.
Hashtag learning.
It's hashtag sunny. What a lovely day it is outside.
What a beautiful hashtag accent. Hashtag high class. Hashtag beautiful.
What are you looking at, Freddie? Hashtag infatuated. Hashtag no idea I'm a flower girl. Hashtag drooling.
He loves you. Hashtag wife material. Hashtag pining.
Hashtag bloody creepy, I tell you.
Haha! How awfully funny!
I don't think so. Hashtag miserable. Hashtag drunk all the time.
Yeah. What interesting small talk. Hashtag new fab. Hashtag bandwagon.
Hashtag won the wager. Hashtag made a duchess.
Hashtag raise to riches. Hashtag glad it's over. Hashtag boring. Hashtag exhausted.
Good job, old chap. Hashtag put your money where your own mouth is. Hashtag dressed her up and took her out.
Hashtag owie owie ow. Hashtag started from the bottom. Hashtag no credit.
What is that screeching? Where are my slippers?
Here's your bloody slippers, you bloody brute. Hashtag treated like a dog. Hashtag no credit. Hashtag ignored. Hashtag cold-hearted brute. Hashtag selfish. Hashtag no manners.
Hashtag presumption.
Yes, that was what a beautiful representation of Pygmalion.